Right, it's the day after the night before Celtic's exit of the Champions League at only the second qualifying round against Ferencvaros. If you want to see our live reaction to the game last night with me and David Walton, just go on the channel and you can see we spoke for about 15-20 minutes on that game. We spoke for a long time, but I still feel like there's so much more that I want to say from last night's game. So I thought I'd do another video now, just with myself, giving some thoughts on what went wrong last night and what we need to do from now on to get things right, because I really fear that we may be witnessing a bit of an unravelling at Celtic, just with how the game went, the performance, the team selection, and probably even more so the comments made after the game. So I'm going to touch on all of that on today's video on the 67 Hail Hail channel. If you've not yet subscribed to the channel, we would really appreciate you doing that. Same as I always say, just take a couple of seconds out of your day and do that. You are coming in your droves at the moment. We're flying up in subscriptions every single day. So if you don't want to miss out on all our brilliant videos at the moment, just do that right now. Right, on to the serious act of looking back at Celtic's 2-1 defeat to the Hungarian champions Ferencvaros last night. For me, the most galling part of it is that I'm not massively shocked. Hugely disappointed, frustrated, angry, embarrassed in many ways that we've shown ourselves to the rest of Scotland, the rest of European football, the British media, that we're clearly not a good side because we've gone out at the second qualifying round to Ferencvaros. Now, a team I commented on last night that were big in the 60s and 70s. I got a good, honest reply from someone saying, to be honest, you can say the same about us. We were a big team in the 60s and 70s and have fallen down big time lately, but we should be so much better than a team like Ferencvaros, given the finances that we have in our play and the players we have. They don't have a £5 million striker they've just bought last week in their team, or a £5 million goalkeeper. So completely, it's completely indescribable and unfathomable, the fact that we went out to a team like that. But as I say, just the way that the afternoon progressed, we heard the early rumours that Neil Lennon wasn't going to start with a striker, and proved to be the case. And from that moment onwards, I was already nervous about the match, but with the minute I saw that we were starting without Odsonne Edouard, without Ajeti, without Klimala, I knew we were in for a tough night, and I really was not surprised with how the game panned out. For the life of me, I cannot get my head round why Neil Lennon didn't start with a striker. Now, I know he's quoted as saying that both Ajeti and Klimala weren't match fit. To be honest, I don't believe that. I don't believe that Patrick Klimala isn't match fit. He came on at Tannadice at the weekend. He looked absolutely fine. He actually looked good. He looked lively against tired legs. And this is a guy we bought in January, and he was hailed as a big signing at the time. And Neil Lennon hasn't started him in a Champions League qualifier when everyone was crying out for him to do it. Edouard wasn't around. Ajeti wasn't fit. Griffiths isn't around. And he still didn't start Klimala. Now, what does that do to Klimala's confidence? I struggle to see how he comes back from it. I genuinely do. Because it's all well and good saying he's only just in the door, but Klimala's now been at the club for 8 or 9 months. Now, I know a lot of that was during lockdown and not playing any games, but it's still a long time to be at the club. And Lennon has a habit of doing this with players. We've seen it with Shved, a player we paid a couple of £1 million for, albeit under Brendan Rodgers. Bombed out, finished at the club. Bio, same again, bombed out, finished at the club. The next one's going to be Ismaila Soro. Now, where's he? Again, Lennon's comments saying we're going to take it slow, introducing him into the team. Why? If we've signed him to be a first team player, why can he not play some matches? But obviously the big one last night, Klimala, just completely disheartening for him. I actually feel quite sorry for him, because he's been praised by Lennon all pre-season. He's been hearing great things, and then he gets that kick from his manager. So massively disappointing for him. Just Lennon's comments overall after the game at Tannadice on Saturday, praised the team's effort, their desire in getting the result. He was really appreciative of what they've done. And then after the game last night, he's coming out criticising players, saying they don't want to be there. And it just doesn't add up for me. It's not a happy camp at the club. And I am genuinely a bit concerned for what's to come this season. I could honestly see a bit of an unravelling, as I said. Lennon's got prior history with it, with the likes of Hibernian, and how things ended up for him there. And, with players turning on him and stuff like that. So I've got that fear, I'm not going to lie to you. I talked about the pie of blame last night, and thanks to everyone who commented on that. David gave virtually all of it to Neil Lennon, and I totally agree. Lennon's improved his squad, but he's just not learning the lessons from last year. That's one of the most galling things for me, the fact that it was the same as against Cluj, losing daft counter-attack goals. It was the same against Copenhagen, losing daft counter-attack goals through lax defending. Both goals were pretty unforgivable. I know the first goal was a really good strike from the guy, but the defending, Christopher Ayer in particular, is absolutely awful. And that comes down to coaching for me. These guys have shown that they're not bad players. They've got results in Europe, the vast majority of them. They showed that last year. But why, when it comes to knockout games, do they struggle so badly? I can't get my head around it. They don't even have the excuse of feeling nervous because the Celtic Park support were nervous. There was no fans there last night, and they still looked remarkably nervous. And again, I knew it was coming. When it went 1-1 and everyone's thinking we'll kick on, I absolutely knew we'd get stung in the break because they had pace, and I knew we'd do something daft. And El Hamid doesn't cover himself in glory, far from it. Barca shouldn't be beaten through his legs. It was a really disappointing goal, and you knew the minute they scored that we weren't going to score again. We huffed and puffed, but there was no end product there. Sadly, that's been lacking virtually all season, other than against Reykjavik and Hamilton Accies, who are two teams we should be absolutely demolishing. So I struggle to see where we go from here. The team needs fresh impetus from somewhere. Now that can come in two ways. It can either come from a new manager, or it can come from new signings. I think it's more likely to be the latter. There's a lot of people saying Neil Lennon should go. Don't know if I would quite go that far, but I actually, for the first time, I think I've turned on Neil Lennon. I think he's really put his pressure on himself with his team selection, and the fact he only made a substitution, the first one in 78 minutes. Now I know he could only make 3 subs last night. I know a lot of people think it's 5. I've looked at the rules, it's actually only 3. However, still making your first one in 78 minutes after we've gone 2-1 behind is pretty unforgivable. But going forward, he needs to get these players out that don't want to be there, because we're going to throw away 10 in a row if he doesn't. And if he feels he can't do it, he needs to go himself, and we need to get a new manager in. I know people may think that's drastic, and we're only in August and we've only dropped 2 points in the league, but this is a huge season, and last night was bad, and it was career-ending bad, or Celtic career-ending bad for some people. I think players or manager. I think it's more likely to be the players, as I say. But something's got to change going forward. I'll give a shout out to John McGinley of the channel. He made a really good point last night, and it got me nodding. If we're going to play against Rangers this Sunday and not Motherwell, would anyone out there watching this actually believe that we'd beat Rangers? I'm being honest, I think we'd struggle. I think Rangers would be the favourites against us, and that is unforgivable as well. This is a team who are really struggling to play big matches. You look around the team, there's so many players who have their position assured no matter what happens with them. James Forrest has absolutely no competition. He has nobody pushing him for a place. Greg Taylor now has absolutely nobody. It doesn't matter if those two play absolutely awful, get sent off, score own goals. They're still playing the next week because they've got absolutely no competition. You could say the same for Scott Brown in midfield, although many will argue that Encham should be playing ahead of him. It doesn't seem like Lennon wants to drop Brown, who's been off form all season so far. You look at centre-back, where's the options there if Christopher Julian decides to have a bad game? It's just, we've gone from having a pretty strong squad to having very little in reserve for me. We've got some good players that are struggling at the moment, and it's just massively concerning. But if we need to get things right, and to be honest, I'm a bit stumped with how we do that. We'll go into the Europa League now. We'll play in the third qualifying round unless we get a bye to the fourth qualifying round. I hear there's a 1 in 5 chance of that happening. To be honest, I hope it does, because I'd have no faith at all in us getting through a couple of rounds, even one round maybe in the Europa League. But yeah, getting to the Europa League, it may be at the back of a lot of people watching this mind, but it's very important for the players we have. The elephant in the room right now, Odsonne Edouard. Imagine him sitting at home watching that game last night. Does he still want to be at the club when we're going out to Ferencvaros? He's much bigger than that. And if we're honest, we all admit that he is. So would you really hold it against him if he wanted to move on? Would you really hold it against Olivier Ntcham if he wanted to move on? If Celtic aren't in Europe at all this season, it's a dire state to be in. Moving forward, we must qualify for the Europa League. I think it's massively important. I know people will say it's all about the 10 in a row, but in terms of keeping players but also attracting new players, we need to have European football of some sort at the club. On that subject, we need a centre-back, maybe 2. We need a left-back. We need a right winger. And we need another centre-mid. We need all that, and I've just not got any faith now that the club will be able to bring in quality players. They might go down the road again of bringing in a Klimala or a Soro or a Bio, players who just won't get a chance under Neil Lennon, and what is the point in doing that? But on top of all that, on top of needing all the new players and needing to qualify for the Europa League, I genuinely fear that we may need a new manager, a more tactically astute manager, and it genuinely pains me to say that, but we've got to be honest about this. It's a tough place to be in, but we've got to go forward. In terms of any small positives, I've been trying to think of anything, racking my brains. I suppose the fact that Celtic fans didn't actually have to go to the ground last night and get stuck in traffic on the way home and pay their money to actually travel to the game. Now, I know they've already paid money for season tickets in the Path to Paradise, but at least that's a small bit of comfort there. And also, possibly, we've now got a few more free midweeks over the next 3 or 4 weeks. I think our next Europa League game will be in about a month, so hopefully we could squeeze in a couple of our rearranged league games in that time and get them played and get ourselves back in the hunt for 10 in a row. It's going to be tough to win 10 in a row, but here's hoping we've still got it in us. But big changes needed at the club. Let us know what you thought of this video. Sorry if it's been massively downbeat. I'm just trying to sum up how I feel at the moment, and I think how the wider Celtic support feel as well. So let us know below, and if you've not yet managed to subscribe to the channel, we would massively appreciate that.